Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Prasar Bharati. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Hunter Biden has been found guilty on all 3 charges in his federal gun trial, becoming sitting US president's first son to be criminally convicted. Hamas responds to a US-backed proposal for a Gaza ceasefire, seeks complete halt of offensive in Gaza proposal response. Malawi's Vice President Solos Chilima and 9 others killed in a plane crash. The flight had gone missing on Monday. Unbeaten India to take on co-hosts the US in the ICC Men's T20 World Cup 2024 on Wednesday, with an eye on Super 8 spot. President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has been convicted by a jury on Tuesday of lying about his illegal drug use to buy a gun, making him the first child of a sitting US president to be convicted of a crime. Hunter Biden faces up to 25 years in jail, but is unlikely to receive the maximum sentence, as Caroline Malone reports.
In a statement shortly after the verdict, he said he was disappointed with the outcome, but that the love and support of his family was even more important and warming to him. We heard much the same from the US president himself. Joe Biden saying that, people have to remember he is not just the president, he's also a father, and the love of his family is more important to him. However, we also heard live from President Biden during a gun violence prevention event later on Tuesday afternoon. He addressed the need to ban assault weapons. He spoke to a crowd in a tone that was very much campaigning, which is ahead, of course, of the US presidential election later this year. He did not mention his son's verdict, that his son had been found guilty on these 3 charges. However, President Biden did change his schedule. He is headed straight for Wilmington, Delaware. He is expected to be there until Wednesday afternoon, when he's due to fly out to Europe to be present for the G7 leaders meeting. Now, during this trial itself, we heard a lot of testimony from witnesses talking about Hunter Biden's substance abuse problems, how he used and abused drugs over many years. The ultimate question was he using drugs or knew that he had been using drugs when he entered the form to say that he wasn't a drug user to buy the gun? Clearly, they found him guilty of that. But the special prosecutor, David Weiss, came out afterwards and said it isn't just about this as a person who has an addiction. This is about his criminal act. This is about the lying that is the crucial part of why he was found guilty. We also heard from another interesting voice. That was from one of the jury members, known as jury number 10. Wasn't given his name to US media, but he spoke out earlier on Tuesday and said that there was sadness on his part for the Biden family. He thought it was especially sad that Naomi Biden, who's the daughter of Hunter Biden, was took to the stand and gave evidence about her own father and his substance abuse problems. He said it didn't help their case, it didn't hurt their case, but he didn't see it as being necessary. But clearly in the last couple of weeks, a lot of the challenges and problems and sadness of the Biden family has been aired to the public. And here we are now with this guilty verdict for Hunter Biden. We await a sentencing date. It could happen in the next few months, anything up to 120 days. During that time, July 8th, we're likely to get Donald Trump sentencing as well. He, of course, was found guilty on 34 business falsifying claims. So we could be in a scenario when potentially both Donald Trump and the son of the president, Hunter Biden, get jail time, really, before we get to the presidential election this year. At least with Hunter Biden, though, the special prosecutor has come out to say they're not going to be going for the maximum sentence because he's a first-time offender. Hunter Biden, though, does also have another trial coming up in September where he's facing tax evasions. All of this happening, of course, just a few months before November's presidential election. Caroline Malone in Washington for DD India.
US President Joe Biden showcased his administration's efforts to cut down on illegal gun trafficking just hours after his son Hunter was convicted of lying about his drug use to illegally buy a gun. Democrats largely favor stricter gun laws to reduce deaths from gun violence across the country.
In 2 weeks, we'll mark the second anniversary of the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. It's the most significant gun legislation in nearly 30 years. It was designed to reduce gun violence and save lives, and I'm so proud of the tremendous progress we made since then.
And Hamas formally responded to a US ceasefire proposal for the 8-month-old conflict in the Gaza Strip. Hamas official reaffirmed its stance that a ceasefire must lead to a permanent end to hostilities in Gaza. This would be a 3-phase plan, starting with an initial 6-week ceasefire with an Israeli military withdrawn from populated areas of Gaza.
Israel is committed to these goals: to free all the hostages, to destroy Hamas's military and governing capabilities, and to ensure that Gaza does not pose a threat to Israel in the future.
Israel sticking to its guns against the Hamas as the United Nations Security Council backed a proposal on Monday outlined by President Joe Biden for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Russia abstained from the UN vote, while the remaining 14 Security Council members voted in favor of the resolution supporting the 3-phase ceasefire plan laid out by President Joe Biden on the 31st of May that he described as an Israeli initiative. The Hamas welcomed the adoption of the US drafted resolution in a statement saying it is ready to cooperate with the mediators who are implementing the principles of the plan. In Tel Aviv on Tuesday, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who had just met family members of Israeli hostages being held captive in Gaza, dubbed the Hamas's reaction as a positive sign and put the onus for clinching the deal on the Palestinian terror group.
Well, I say it is a hopeful sign, just as statement that they issued after the president made his proposal 10 days ago was hopeful, but it's not dispositive. What is dispositive, at least what's so far been dispositive one way or another, is the word coming from Gaza and from the Hamas leadership in Gaza. That's what counts, and that's what we don't have yet. And that's why I say we're waiting to see. Everyone has said yes, except for Hamas. And if Hamas doesn't say yes, then this is clearly on them.
Tuesday saw added pressure being put on both sides to agree to truce at an emergency humanitarian conference for Gaza in Amman, co-hosted by Jordan, Egypt and the United Nations to let more aid into the besieged strip.
Excellencies, the horror must stop. It's high time for a ceasefire along with the unconditional release of hostages. I welcome the peace initiative recently outlined by President Biden and urge all parties to seize this opportunity and come to an agreement.
But on the battleground, the fighting keeps taking a heavy toll. In Jerusalem, family, friends and comrades attended the funeral of a 19-year-old Israeli soldier killed in battle in southern Gaza. 4 Palestinians were killed in the West Bank by Israeli soldiers on Tuesday, conducting an operation near Ramallah to catch an arson suspect. Peace remains elusive. Qatari and Egyptian mediators are yet to receive formal replies from Hamas or Israel to the UN-backed truce proposal, although officials on both sides indicated the plans fulfill their diverging goals. Bureau Report, DD, India.
And Malawi's Vice President Saulos Klaus Chilema, whose plane went missing in dense forest on Sunday, was declared dead the next day. In a press statement, Malawi's President Chakwera announced all 9 members on board have been killed. The President expressed deep condolences to the families. The departed Vice President Saulos Klaus Chilema was a business executive turned politician and assumed Vice President office in 2020. He was also seen as a potential candidate in next year's presidential election.
The search and rescue operation I ordered to find the missing plane that carried our Vice President and 9 others has been completed and the plane has been found. And I am deeply saddened and sorry to inform you all that it has turned out to be a terrible tragedy.
The remains of Malawi's Vice President, Saulos Klaus Chilima, and 9 others killed in plane crash were flown back to Malawi's capital Lilongwe on Tuesday evening. The military aircraft carrying Chilima, seen as a potential candidate in next year's presidential election, went missing on Monday. The former First Lady, Chanel Zimbiri, was also amongst the crash victims. Chilima returned from South Korea on Sunday after participating in the Korea-Africa Summit and was traveling with other passengers on Monday morning to attend the funeral of Malawi's former Justice Minister in the north of the country. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Labour leader Keir Starmer go head-to-head in a second televised debate on Wednesday. It comes after the governing Conservatives released their election manifesto ahead of July 4th poll. DD India's Oli Barrett reports from London. Have a look.
Well, the war of words between the governing Conservative Party and opposition Labour, particularly about the economy and taxation, is increasingly robust. The Labour Party are accusing the Conservatives of gaslighting the country when it comes to the economy and their pledges over taxation. In the Conservative Party's manifesto launch on Tuesday, they did pledge billions of dollars in tax cuts, the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak insisting that the government can allow people to keep more of their own money in their pockets rather than giving it to the government to spend. The Labour Party insist that they are unfunded, uncosted tax cuts and that the Conservatives have not set out the full detail about how exactly they would raise the money to pay for them. In turn, the Conservatives accuse the Labour Party of having a series of spending pledges that would require a series of tax rises. That is a principle that the Labour Party denies. Now, later we have the second televised head-to-head debate between Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, and Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, with polling continuing to suggest that the Conservatives trail by a wide margin Keir Starmer's Labour Party. It may well be a similar situation to what we saw the first time round, with Keir Starmer trying to play it safe and not make a major slip-up, and Rishi Sunak perhaps minded to go on the attack because he needs something in the polling to change between now and July the 4th, and change by a significant amount. Also on Wednesday, the Green Party released their election manifesto. Oli Barrett in London reporting for DD India.
Well, let's see what else is happening around the world. Iceland issued a new license to its sole remaining whaling company on Tuesday, enabling it to continue hunting this season. The move drew a sharp response from campaigners and activists. Victims of sexual abuse by the Catholic Church gathered in front of Spain's parliament on Tuesday. The protesters demanded urgent processing of reform of the penal code pertaining to crimes of pedophilia. The reform lifts the statute of limitation for crimes. Ukraine presented the unmanned systems forces in Kyiv on Tuesday. This comes a day after the military announced the appointment of a new commander. Thousands of Muslim pilgrims arrived at the Grand Mosque in Saudi Arabia's Mecca on Tuesday ahead of the start of Hajj. Hajj is the fifth pillar of Islam and begins in the 12th month of the Islamic calendar. It is mandatory for every able-bodied Muslim who can afford it to partake at least once in their lifetime. And still to come on this edition of DD India Live. India demands a verified cessation of any further recruitment of Indian nationals by the Russian army. Japan considering to impose sanctions on companies including Chinese firms suspected of aiding Russia in the Ukraine conflict. You're watching DD India Live. I am Siddharth Bharadwaj. 2 Indians recruited by the Russian army died in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Indian embassy in Moscow has pressed the Russian authorities, including the Ministry of Defense, for early repatriation of mortal remains. India has also demanded that there be a verified stop to any further recruitment of its nationals by the Russian army. Latvia's President Edgars Rinkēvičs hailed NATO's Eastern Flank Summit as historic, as it included the latest members of the alliance, Finland and Sweden, to discuss pressing security issues including Russia and Belarus. At the joint news conference after the meeting in Riga, Poland's President Andrzej Duda said the NATO allies from Romania, Poland and Latvia, part of the Eastern Flank, were deeply concerned about Russia's malign hybrid activities. The Bucharest 9 includes Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania and Slovakia. Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday welcomed Turkey's interest in the BRICS group of nations, including a meeting with Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan in the Kremlin. On Monday, Turkish Foreign Minister has expressed a desire to join BRICS during his visit to China. NATO member Turkey had come under fire by its Western allies in recent years over its ties with Russia, with some saying that its axis was shifting away from the Western military alliance. Ankara has rejected this, saying it remained a committed member of the alliance and maintained its goal of full membership of the European Union. Japan is considering to impose sanctions on companies, including Chinese firms suspected of aiding Russia in the Ukraine conflict. Preparations are underway for Prime Minister Fumio Kishida to announce the sanctions at the G7 summit if the plans are finalized. United States officials claims China of backing Russia's conflict effort in Ukraine by helping Moscow with military buildup. US had already imposed sanctions on over 20 companies based in China and Hong Kong in May. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on Wednesday said his country is an invincible comrade in arms with Russia in a message to President Vladimir Putin amid speculation over Putin's impending visit to North Korea. Marking Russia's National Day, Kim said his meeting with Putin at a Russian space launch facility last year elevated the ties of their century-old strategic relationship. The message came after Russia's Vedomosti newspaper on Monday reported Putin would visit North Korea and Vietnam in coming weeks. The Democratic Republic of Congo swore in Judith Suminwa Tuluka as Prime Minister on Tuesday, along with her downsized 54-member cabinet, ending over 6 months of delays following President Felix Tshisekedi's re-election. He won a second term in late 2023 after elections that handed his Sacred Union coalition around 95% of National Assembly seats. But internal wrangling over ministerial posts delayed the government's formation. The president eventually named Suminwa as Congo's first female prime minister on April 1st and his ex-chief of staff Vital Kamerhe as parliament speaker on May 22nd, paving the way for the new cabinet's appointment. Mexico's President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum on Tuesday tried to calm investor concerns over proposed judicial overhaul. The President-elect has promised that the country would maintain its rule of law while saying she planned to push ahead with the reforms. The judicial reform proposes that judges, including the currently appointed Supreme Court, be popularly elected. Sheinbaum said investors have nothing to worry about. As India's neighbourhood first policy has gone from strength to strength, the bilateral relations between India and Sri Lanka have only improved. During the peak of the economic crisis faced in 2022, India supported Sri Lanka through assistance worth over $4 billion, which helped the island nation obtain essentials including fuel. Here's a report on how India and Lanka IOC helped manage fuel crisis in Sri Lanka.
At a time when Sri Lanka faced an acute crisis of forex leading to shortages in essentials, generous assistance from India worth over $4 billion was also complemented by Indian investments which are operating in Sri Lanka.
During the energy crisis, we almost had our fuel run out from our country. During that time, India and especially the LIOC came out and helped us to resumption of fuel supply. India was the savior of our country.
With the Indian government providing fuel on one end, Lanka IOC, a subsidiary of Indian Oil Corporation, had also added to the efforts in ensuring supplies in the island nation. The oil tank farm at China Bay in Trincomalee had been a major source of strength for the company as it helped in prioritizing and supplying the auto fuels across the island. The oil tank farm is a Second World War era complex which has 99 oil tanks, each with a capacity of over 12,000 kiloliters. Divided into a lower tank farm and an upper tank farm, only 14 of the tanks are being used by Lanka IOC. In 2022, under an agreement, Lanka IOC and Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, together under Trincomalee Petroleum Terminal Limited, have agreed to develop 61 tanks in the upper tank farm.
We are having 14 number of tanks. In that tanks, near about 5-6 different type of products we are storing, testing. But we are very much interested to develop these tanks and to come into for the service of this country and for the people.
With the current infrastructure, Lanka IOC has been providing auto fuels and other products through its island-wide network of retail sheds. Once the oil tank farm is developed to its full capacity, India and Sri Lanka can emerge as partners to turn the oil farm into a regional petroleum hub with immense economic benefits in terms of augmenting energy security for both countries and the region. The storage facility in Trincomalee is at the heart of the energy hub that India is looking forward to develop on the eastern coast of the island, which will further strengthen the island's economy as well as generate considerable employment. For DD India, Ahmed Moin Farooqi from Trincomalee.
You're watching DD India Live. Time now for sport. And Pakistan finally notched their first win of the T20 World Cup 2024 as they got the better of Canada by 7 wickets in New York on Tuesday. Pakistan bowlers proved their mettle to restrict Canada to 106 for 7 in 20 overs. Haris Rauf and Mohammad Amir took 2 wickets each. They later chased down target in 17.3 overs. Having lost 2 games against USA and then against arch rivals India, the Babar Azam-led side needed to beat Canada to have a chance to enter Super 8 phase. Even now, Pakistan would need other teams' result to go their way in order to advance. And India will take on co-hosts United States of America in Long Island with an eye of Super 8 spot in ICC Men's T20 World Cup on Wednesday. India will be coming into the game as runaway favourites, winning 2 back-to-back matches. Helped by surfaces India have played on, their bowlers have been impeccable. Led by peerless Jasprit Bumrah, who bagged the Player of the Match award in both games, they bowled out Ireland for 96 before successfully defending 109 versus Pakistan. Meanwhile, the United States national cricket team has already made a significant impact in the game's hierarchy by defeating Pakistan after a super over in Dallas last Thursday. The Florsier Brook Bridge in Frankfurt gets illuminated on Tuesday night as the city performed a light show rehearsal ahead of Euro 2024. The dazzling display turned the bridge into a radiant spectacle, showcasing intricate patterns and vibrant colors. That's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.